And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Hi out there in internet land. How is everybody? How is everybody? Anybody watching out there? It says 0 people are watching, so that's a good sign. One person's watching. One person's watching. That's good. So, ladies and gentlemen, what a week it has been. What a week. I got back from going up to North Carolina, coming back from Forgotten Coats plein air event, which went wonderfully. And then I went up to the mountains in North Carolina, and with her beloved neighbor, I spread my sister's ashes on her garden because her desire was to become moss and not be in a box. And ladies and gentlemen, her birthday is coming up. And in a couple of weeks, on the 18th, is her birthday. And I think at that time, we're going to have an announcement about starting to put her journal entries on Substack. She was an amazing writer. And that's going to be a fun thing and a wonderful way to honor her. But that's getting a little bit down the road. It's still a couple of weeks away. Right now, I'm here in the office. Here in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Got the wood stove going because it's been cold and gray all day today. And the cats have been requesting. They've been requesting warmth, ladies and gentlemen, because they have lives that are apparently devoid of warmth. I don't quite understand why they're so devoid of warmth. I feel like I am quite warm to them, but they do not necessarily agree. So we have a few people to thank tonight. Our beneficiary to the Liberal Snowplowing Do-Gooder Fund is the wonderful World Central Kitchen, which the more I learn about them, the more impressed with them I am. Very little calling attention to themselves, extraordinarily high amount of money they raise goes to the programs that have been doing amazing stuff in the Ukraine, or not the Ukraine. They've been doing amazing stuff in Ukraine. They do amazing stuff everywhere. So I am pleased to say we've raised $345. $345 for World Central Kitchen. Let's have a shout out from the unidentified unglet. Yeah. And now, special thanks to those who contributed. First off, to the great Sherry Michelson. To Mr. J.T. Mayer ×2. To the awesome Terry Hudson, peripatetic world traveler in her slouchy Betty Sue t-shirt that she is. To Carol Fulkerson out there, seeing all the lambs coming into the world. All the lambs, the midwife of the lambs. My beloved Yale classmate, Ms. Meg Miser, out there in Taos, New Mexico. One of the great spiritual seekers of our time. My painter friend, the wonderful Catherine Fisher. The great John Wilhelm, leaving Omaha, Nebraska, traveling to New Mexico, staying in Las Vegas, New Mexico, traveling around, shooting great photographs, eating meals I wish I was eating. Oh, John Wilhelm. My neighbor in Bellows Falls, Vermont. He's constantly getting put in Facebook jail, ladies and gentlemen. He's momentarily out. And in the moments that he's out, he contributes to the Liberal Snowplowing Do-Gooders. Thank you, Mr. Rick Gavatsky. To Mr. Gary Pierce and Aline Cortez down there in Bonneville, Massachusetts, momentarily released by the Bears. Momentarily, the Bears have said, you may go to the post office and drop a check in the mail. And they did. They raced out, ladies and gentlemen. They raced out and did their part to support the Liberal Snowplowing Do-Gooders. Thank you, Gary and Eileen. Oh, Miss Martha Rowley. Miss Martha Rowley in Saxton's River. She's a wonderful, wonderful, generous soul and a good person to occasionally meet up with for a cocktail. Ms. Martha Rowley. The wonderful Tony Hewlett. Thank you, Tony Hewlett. A last-minute addition to the panoply of contributors tonight. Thank you, Tony. And lastly, out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I don't know if I've ever told you about this, but one branch of my family, well, my dad was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because his dad, Stanley Armstrong Hunter, was the minister at a church, at a Presbyterian church in Pittsburgh. And like moths to the flame, my very diminutive cousins had returned to Pittsburgh. They're wee little folks, so you seldom see them. But the weeest of them all, the weeest of them all, is the wee man, Mr. Nat Hunter and his wonderful wife, Elise. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. It really makes a difference. It's amazing to me. Continually, I say this over and over, but it's amazing to me that by reading humor from 100 years ago that I think is pretty funny, we can raise, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's a significant amount of money for very little effort on, it's stone soup, ladies and gentlemen, stone soup, and I thank you all. And I am honored to do this. So tonight we have two Robert Benchley readings, ladies and gentlemen, two Robert Benchley readings from My 10 Years in a Quandary and How They Grew, which Catherine Fisher sent to me as a Christmas gift for all the readings on Benchley nights. And it's wonderful to have a hardbound version of this because my father's copy was starting to really fall apart, and it was getting harder and harder to read anything from it. The first reading tonight is Mysteries from the Sky. I think that I am violating no confidence when I say that nature holds many mysteries which we humans have not fathomed as yet. Some of them may not even be worth fathoming. What, for instance, do we know of the many strange things that fall from the sky? I don't mean old overshoes and snaffle bits, which everybody knows about, but those large masses of nergium and felucium, which are always dropping out of nowhere onto Kansas and Oklahoma. They've never been actually identified as nergium and felucium because I made those names. Because I made those names up, but they certainly are some form of calcichlorocate, Cb2Ci2M3, or Sneeden's disease. When subjected to a white heat, this substance explodes with a loud bang, B2N2, and is never seen or heard of again. And see if I care. The most famous deposit of this kind occurred near Dormant, Kansas in 1846. Following a heavy thunderstorm, during the night, workers in the fields were more surprised than pleased to find that a whole new state had been added to the Union right on top of their wheat, apparently having dropped from the sky. This made it necessary to elect 2 more senators to go to Congress and to have 1 more state fair each year. All this, of course, resulted in the Civil War. The so-called Reign of Frogs in North Dakota in 1859 was another mix-up. Enoch Caffer, a farmer, was walking along a road near Oysterbed one day when he was hit on the head by a falling frog. On looking up to see where it had come from, he was hit over the eye with another frog. Deciding that it was time to get the hell out of there, he started to run, but soon found himself pelted on all sides by a rain of frogs, all in an ugly humor. On reaching home, Caffer told his experience to his wife, who divorced him. That she had a certain amount of right on her side was shown by subsequent investigations, which disclosed no sign of any frogs or even frog footprints in the neighborhood of where he had been. Caffer himself, however, stoutly maintained his innocence and finally went insane. Another somewhat similar case is recorded in what was then called Indian Territory. A Native American by the name of Ferguson was missing from his home for 2 days, and on finally returning, said that he had been delayed by being hit by a falling meteorite, which had come flaming through the sky at him as he was crossing a field. As proof of his story, he displayed an ugly cut across the bridge of his nose and a black eye. There was also a cigarette burn on the forefinger and a corresponding one on the middle finger of his right hand. The odd part about this incident is that the next day, an enormous meteorite was discovered half buried in the field he had crossed, where it is to be seen to this day. Ferguson, however, disappeared. These are only a few of the mysteries which nature has up her sleeve to drop down on us if we get fresh and try to stand upright. In the face of them, we ought either to be very humble or else to get good and sore. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. When I was like 12 years old reading these, it was revelatory that this absurdist humor, which I sort of knew from Woody Allen and stuff, I guess, to realize it had been around for all these decades. And when we started doing the Roots on the Rails trips, to find out that Dave Alvin and oh gosh, I'm blanking her name, our ditzy friend from Seattle, Dave's friend. Anyway, Dave and I are all people who read Benchley with huge delight. And the very first Benchley story that I read on Roots on the Rails, we decided in 2016, I think, to do Benchley night on board the train. And Dave read a story and read a story and I read a story. I read No Pullmans, Please. I suppose that it is just looking for trouble on my part. But what are they going to do with all the old Pullman cars when the streamliners come in to general use? Thank you, Christy McWilson. You're all right. You're all correct. I, for some reason, just blanked it because that was an extemporaneous recollection of how that this was the first one that we read. I'm going to start again, but you're all correct. Christy McWilson, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Christy McWilson. Let's get the unglit. All right. I suppose it's just looking for trouble on my part. But what are they going to do with all the old Pullman cars when the streamliners come into general use? I hope they don't try to palm one of them off on me. I simply couldn't take care of an old Pullman car. I haven't got the space in the first place. It's all I can do to find room for my big bag after I've unpacked it. Imagine trying to crowd a Pullman in here, too. Neither have I the inclination. I see no reason why I should be made to take over something I really don't want. Do you? And yet I have a And yet I have a horrible premonition that some days I have a horrible premonition that someday soon they're going to drag around a car named Gleaber's Falls or Angostura and ask me to give it a home. The first time I read about the advent of this new type of sleeping car, I said, quick as a flash, "Here it comes. I get the old ones." They've got to do something with all those laburnums and Latvias. And I always seem to get things like that. Give it to old Bob, people say, when they're tearing down their houses. That'll be just right for his room. I am to blame in a way. For a long time ago, I set out to furnish a room in sort of a knick-knack fashion. I even invited contributions. But what I meant from my friends was I wanted contributions that I could use. I did not mean that I was starting a whaling museum or that I planned to build more Romes. I simply had more or less in mind a mid-Victorian study of the whatnot variety. Well, I got my whatnots. It began with little articles to line up on top of a bookcase: miniature geese, little men with baskets, shells with eggs in them, and broken stags. I also was not averse to hanging oddments on the walls. My friends entered into the spirit of this admirably. Everyone had fun, but the lady who dusted. Then people began looking around town for heavier gifts. It got to be a game. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is the little picture that we ran. It got to be a game. Look at all those things that people are bringing in to Robert Benchley. Oh, Lord, ladies and gentlemen. Trucks began arriving with old busts of Sir Walter Scott, 4-foot statues of men whose shirt fronts lit up when attached to an electric connection, stuffed owls, and fox terriers that had lain too long at the taxidermists. This phase ended with the gift of a small two-headed calf in a moderate state of preservation. Now, a sidebar, ladies and gentlemen, apparently that really is true. Somebody did give Robert Benchley a two-headed calf that had been not terribly well preserved, and he stuck it in his closet because he's got another essay about the terror he has about opening the closet because he's afraid that the calf will have moved since the last time he saw it. I'm going to reread that sentence. It's so good. This phase ended with the gift of a small two-headed calf in a moderate state of preservation. From then on, the slogan became, "Send it to Benchley." Wrecking concerns were pressed into service. Chipped cornices from the old post office, detached flights of stairs, hitching posts, and railings began pouring in. Every day was like Christmas in Pompeii. The overflow went into the bedroom, and I started sleeping under an old spinet, covered over with a set of bead curtains, which had been brought to me from a bordello in Marseille. The friendly mood in which this game started changed gradually to one of persecution. The idea began to embarrass me and to make it impossible for me to move about. On several occasions, it became a matter for the police, and once the Missing Persons Bureau took a hand in it and searched my room for a runaway college girl. They found nothing, however, except 3 Chinese laborers who had been smuggled into the country and delivered to my place in a caterer's wagon. So perhaps I have the right to be worried about these now out-of-date Pullmans. I have had stranger things foisted on me. I think that this time I will put my foot down. At the first sign of a Pullman being brought up the stairs, I will bolt the door, leaving my friends to their own devices with it. I don't want any more truck in this room, much less a full-blown Pullman sleeping car. And as ungracious as this may seem, I do not intend to have it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I so love doing these. I'm so honored you choose to come spend, well, today 8:07, so like 25 minutes of your Sunday evening. Thank you so much. And you take good care. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.